Stay tuned. Coming up, it's flashback to episode 117 and part 2 of my two-part interview with Ryan Pyle, a battalion chief with Shawnee Fire Department, sharing the details of a horrific line-of-duty death of Firefighter John Glaser. But first, let's hear from our amazing sponsor, Midwest Fire. At Midwest Fire, they know better efficiency results in less waste, and it adds value to every truck they deliver. That's why they have worked hard to implement lean manufacturing processes throughout their factory. Lean manufacturing means a lower cost to build, with the savings passed on to you. To learn more, visit MidwestFire.com. Hello and welcome to the Situation Awareness Matters Show, episode 339. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situation awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SA Matters mission is simple. We want to help you see the bad things coming in time to prevent bad outcomes. Today's feature segment is sponsored by our new online training platform, Gassaway Virtual Training. We now have 33 online programs for your members. Some of these programs are live events presented virtually, and some of them are pre-recorded programs. To learn more, visit samatters.com website and click on the Virtual Training tab. Okay, let's jump into today's feature segment, a flashback to episode number 117 and part 2 of my two-part interview with Ryan Pyle, a battalion chief with the Shawnee Fire Department, sharing the details of a horrific line-of-duty death of Firefighter John Glaser. One note before we begin, this interview was recorded before I was doing the show in both video and audio format, so the discussion with Ryan is in audio-only format.
Well, when I left the hospital, we went back to Station 71. At this point, numerous members, a lot of our firefighters were there, doing anything they could. I think a lot of them didn't know what to do. They took us back there. We immediately began debriefing, which is a standard practice for us. They have a team in Johnson County that they rotate being on call. And, you know, by now it's approaching midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. So we each have to tell what our role was, what happened, you know. So I'm 2 or 3 hours removed, if that, 2 hours removed from the worst day of my professional life by far, the worst moment of my professional life. And we're having to talk about it. They release us to go home. The other members of the department and, again, adjoining agencies stepped up and they're covering stations. We had Overland Park and Lenexa Fire Department at the fire. There were no Shawnee personnel there. We left our trucks there, and they finished the job. The very next morning, we were called about 8:30 to go in to give our account of what happened to the investigators who had already started their investigation. So I gave my oral, the oral part to the two investigators. Then people that were intimately involved in it were packed up, and we went to the house. And that was one of the hardest parts of it for me was going back to that house, because you know as well or better than anybody, things look a lot different in the daytime with no smoke and no fire than they do when you're crawling in a zero visibility structure. Mm-hmm. And you know, at that time it looked so easy, and I'll never forget seeing those 2 doors that I didn't know were there. And I was inches from that. And at that, even at that, during the incident, one of the guys was standing right at that door, and I redirected him and told him to go a different way. I didn't know those doors were there. And to see that in the daytime and to be questioned about, okay, where were you? Where do you think you were when John said, help me? And, you know, he wasn't that far. But that night it seemed like he was a long ways away. So that, you know, that was a tough part for me. So we get done with that. They release us to go home. The next day or so is filled with interviews with different authorities, trying to figure out what happened. More debriefings. So that was a large part of what we did for those next day. Somebody was always with John at the funeral home. 2 days after the fire, yet another difficult thing was I had to go with the fire chief to hit his widow's house. John left at that time a 6-month-old little girl and a 2.5-year-old boy. So I went to their house with the fire chief, and his wife and his dad opened the door, and all I could say was, I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to say. They were very welcoming, as they had always been. And we had some conversations. They were still all very much in shock. But as we were leaving that day, I'll never forget, and it's been part of what's driven me to talk about it and share the story is John's dad. One day, maybe a day and a half removed from losing his son, told me, losing my son is a tragedy. If you fall apart, that's 2 tragedies. He said, so turn this into something good. And I thought that was a really important thing to say. It's meant a lot in my life. And that's somebody that just lost their son. So I've honored his wishes and John's by telling this story. So that's powerful.
All right. Tell me, keep going. You're gonna have a funeral.
Yeah,
and I want you to talk about that. I want people to hear what this is like to live this through your experience.
Okay, well, that next week it's just a whirlwind. We have the funeral. It's massive. We put John on the engine. It's surreal to go into your station that you've been working at for years and see them putting the funeral bunting and the retrofitting the engine that you're on to put one of your members on. It's stuff you read about, stuff you see, other people go through, but it's much different when you go through it. So, we laid John to rest, and it never goes away. It's always with you. They gave us as much time as we needed. I took 3 shifts. Some guys took 1 shift, and then we came back to work. And that's not an easy thing to do. But I think it's an important thing to do to get back on the rig. And so we were back. We're back to work, but it doesn't end there. They give you a little bit of time to get through things, and then NIOSH comes and they do their investigation. I found them to be extremely professional. I found them to be extremely sensitive to what is going on. I at no point felt like I was in an inquisition. They really do a good job, but it's just reliving that over and over and over. So that week after the incident was nonstop go. We spent a lot of time together as a department. We had unbelievable support from other departments in Johnson County. Our stations were staffed 24 hours a day. Nobody missed a beat. So it was special to see, but I wouldn't want to ever do it again under those circumstances.
Did you guys ever have any contact with the owner of the house?
Not me personally. The investigators did. The fire was ruled accidental. So I never had any personal connection with him, no.
Mm-hmm. Was the house saved, or was it tore down?
No, they rebuilt it. Okay. So, oftentimes we'll get a call in that area, and it comes right back to you.
When you got back on the job, did you find yourself having any difficulty with your confidence, or getting back in the saddle, so to speak?
Yeah, I did. I was waiting for that next fire. I felt like I needed to get that under my belt, and when I did, and it went well, that helped a lot. But it never goes away. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about John. And that's good. My confidence was shaken a little bit. I had been a big proponent of everyone goes home and firefighter safety and things like that. And for a period of time, I felt like I had let everybody down and let myself down, and but we've learned from it. I think of talking about it. I'm not suggesting that it should be everybody's way of handling it, but I think it's important, because whether I tell the story or I don't tell the story isn't going to change that John is gone. Mm-hmm. So if anybody can learn anything, just by hearing the story, and that's what I typically do when I do the presentation that has the audio and pictures of the structure. I just tell the story, and I tell everybody, there's no questions that are out of bounds. I want people to know that it is very real. It doesn't matter the size of department you're from. It doesn't matter what the size of the structure you're in. Those things don't matter. It doesn't matter how many years you've had on the job. It doesn't matter how much education you've had. These things happen, and we've got to find a way to get better and eliminate it.
Mm-hmm. Well, what did you guys learn from this? Maybe individually and departmentally, what did you learn, and did you change anything?
Well, initially we didn't do wholesale changes. We took a long look at how we did things. I would say now we are much, much improved in the area of training. We have had some captains that were intimately involved in this incident really step up and become advocates, teachers, and really masters of managing a mayday. And again, this was a pretty unorthodox thing that happened. I think we all know, if you've been on the job any period of time, I think we all know people that have thrown up in their mask or thrown up somewhere on the scene. I don't ever remember hearing of an incident where somebody threw up in their mask and it led to their death. So that's one of the things that these guys trained on. They actually took cans of chunky soup, poured it into their mask, and came up with a way of doing getting anything out of your mask, whether it be vomit or any other foreign object, with a better way to do it than to pull your entire mask off. So they trained on that. We've had lengthy discussions about who should have the camera, and I think that's an important thing. One of the questions I get asked on a fairly regular basis anytime I talk about this is bringing that line in, and why wasn't the line charged? Because I've had people ask me, do you think John would have found his way out if the line would have been charged? And my answer to that is no, I don't. And the reason I say that is I was straddling the line, and had he been moving towards the line, yeah, maybe a charged line he would have been able to feel it, but John was moving away from it. So in this particular situation, I would say that it probably wouldn't have made a difference. But that's a good discussion to have at the company level. Is if taking a line in on a search is one of your practices, that's a discussion to have. So we've done things like that. I think we've gotten better at the little things, the managing the Mayday, because it's so much more real now, and it's unfortunate that we have to go through this to get to the point where we realize that, okay, we need to make some changes in these areas. One thing that made it extremely difficult for this particular fire is even the NIOSH report was pretty vague. We had some communication issues, the things that are in pretty much every NIOSH report, but it was hard to pinpoint exactly what could have been done to prevent this incident. And that's been a hard thing for me. And I didn't think it would be, but I think it would have been really helpful to have that. If you would have done this, this would have not happened. And we just don't have that one thing. Short of when John took his mask off, we were on borrowed time. And with the smoke conditions and what the medical directors told us as far as, what the survivability profile of somebody in those conditions, you just didn't have much time.
Mm-hmm. How far were you guys into the house?
I would say 15 feet, and that would be on the long end.
So 15 feet from fresh air.
15 feet from fresh air, yes.
Man, that is so scary.
It is. And Dr. Gasaway, that's why I tell people, don't get fooled by, the size of the structure, things like that. Yeah, obviously a small structure, you've got a better chance. I do believe that, but I think there's a false sense of security when somebody goes into a 1,500 square foot house and thinks, well, the old bread and butter, cookie cutter house, bread and butter fire. Once your mask comes off, you better have a solution real quick.
Yeah.
That 1,500 square feet or a 10,000 square feet, you better have some fresh air very, very quick, or be very close to somebody that can get you out. You just don't have much time in those conditions. This was by no means laminar smoke. This was serious floor to ceiling, zero visibility, heat and smoke.
Was the smoke coming from burning vehicles?
It was.
Yeah. Okay. I think we can all put in our mind what that smoke looks like.
Right. And now take 3 burning vehicles in a confined area and what I term as a chimney going straight up the stairs,
yeah,
with nothing to stop it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a significant amount of smoke.
Was your crew first in, second in?
We were second in, but we were the first ones in the building. They were knocking down the fire on the Bravo side with a 2.5
from the outside.
And from the outside, I mean, they had fire coming out of the garages, going up into the eaves, but they were, and you know, anybody listening to your show's been on car fires, and you know, we all know they can be stubborn. Well, that's the same thing they were running into with, you know, the 3 cars in the basement. Or, you know, that I call it the basement. It was a garage, you know, with a living space next to it. Yeah. So, I mean, they weren't able to make a significant amount of headway. They were trying, but, you know, the cars were just being stubborn. There was a significant amount of fire load, not to mention everything else that's in a typical garage.
Now, you said that you guys had as a result of this, got better at managing Maydays. Tell me what you did and how you got better.
Well, yeah, what I think we did was we started talking a little bit more about what I spoke about earlier is, you know, those Maydays when you don't have a lot of information, Maydays when it's not necessarily you falling through the floor, you becoming disoriented. You know, what do you do when you have those Maydays and you don't have all that information, or you don't know exactly what happened? You know, you go in a front door and one of your company falls through the floor. That's a lot of information you can give in a short period of time.
Did you guys practice calling Maydays for someone else?
We have since then. Yeah. Didn't before.
No, I don't. I get around quite a bit, and I don't know anybody that has built that into. You know, there'll be a listener out there that says, "We do it." Okay, good for you. I see a lot of departments doing a lot of training. I get to see that firsthand, and I don't recall seeing that where you practice calling the Mayday for someone else, and that's a pretty important skill.
It is, and you know, and it's not something that we think about a lot. You know, we have the Pittsburgh drill props. We have the prop that you know, you put a dowel rod on a piece of hinged wood, and you simulate falling into the basement. What do? We had all those things, and you know, it's something that we drilled on, but that's all working under the assumption that you knew exactly what happened. And again, I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but that's my takeaway from this is, you know, the first thing is we need to practice on not being in that situation in the first place. If you don't ever have to call a Mayday, that's best case scenario. But if you do end up in a situation where you have to call a Mayday, be prepared for all those scenarios. I'm not advocating that we don't train for calling a Mayday on yourself. I absolutely think that's a vital skill. But let's expand that. You know, let's expand that to calling a Mayday when you don't have all the information or you don't know. When you can't even fill out lunar because you don't have all of those pieces. It is my opinion that we need to readjust our thinking. And we have one captain in particular, again, who was intimately involved in the rescue, has taken that upon himself. And he is a very passionate, strong leader. And he has done some unbelievably good things for our department. And he's extended that out to other departments on that Mayday, and that was driven by, I believe that was driven by that incident. He has done exhaustive research on how to never put himself in that position, and I would trust him with anything at this point, for sure.
Now, you said that you did some training on how to manage, excuse me, through a situation where a person might emaciate in their face piece, and you said you used some chunky soup and stuff. So did you all learn? What is there a better way or a best practice way to deal through this if it happens? I'm guessing a lot of departments haven't gone to the extent that you have to figure out how to manage through that. Give some advice.
There is no great way, and I'm just going to speak from there are others in my organization that are much better to talk to about this, but because they've done that exhaustive research. But the best way that we have found is, if this happens, just to take your face piece off a little. Just open that up, turn your bypass on, so where you get that free flow. Things like that can really go a long way. The danger becomes is when your mask is completely off. It's very hard to get back on in those conditions. Maybe in a controlled environment when you're thinking about it and there's no imminent danger, maybe it'd be a little bit easier. But I encourage departments to just think about it, because I'm not sure we have all the answers, and I don't want to imply that we do. But what those guys have found is by taking your mask off just a little bit, enough to get that out of there and turn in on your bypass, that's going to buy you a lot of time and not panicking. The person that has the most answers about this situation is the one person we can't talk to, that being John. We would love to have that conversation of, how to best do this. But I think he got in a situation that he couldn't get himself out of. And unfortunately he was on the move, and that made it difficult. And I honestly believe that he thought he was going out of the building. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what we've done. But the best way to do it, I think, is encourage people to try their own way. It doesn't have to be vomit. It could be any foreign matter in your mask. I mean, but at the end of the day, the bottom line is, let's figure out how to keep that mask on no matter what. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of the conclusion we've come to, is removing your mask even a little way or all the way is an absolute last resort. And we should train to not have that happen, as opposed to when it does happen. That should be our primary focus.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is an amazing story. If anyone out there listening wanted to follow up with you, say they've got some questions, or maybe they're even interested in having you come in and share this story at their department, how do they find you?
I can be reached at the Shawnee Fire Department. I'd be happy to provide my email address, which is rpyle@cityofshawnee.org. And again, there's no question I won't answer. I may not have the answer to it, but I'll sure attempt to answer. And again, out of this incident, there has been a captain who I believe has become a master at managing the Mayday, and a retired captain who's now a chief in another organization, who also he was the RIT supervisor, and he does an excellent job of talking about Mayday without a voice. And we briefly touched on that today, is, that Mayday without a voice. How do you call Mayday on somebody that can't talk? Mm-hmm. And that's so very important. And I think it's gotten lost somehow. I'm sure there are listeners who have done that, and I applaud them. But prior to this incident, that's not something we ever did.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's a lot that haven't. I observe a lot of this training firsthand, and I've not run into it. So that's going to be a valuable takeaway for the listeners to to do that drill and to practice that.
Yeah, it's been important for us, I think. And I think we've just the everyday training, the emphasis on those skills. I think it's easy, especially now, to get caught in so many other things going on in the fire service. Certainly EMS, which is like everybody else, the majority of what we do, that has become a real emphasis, as it should. But, I don't want to lose that like Gordon Graham says, that high risk, low frequency. I don't want to lose that the importance of training on those, because those are the ones that that's getting firefighters killed. I'm certainly not saying that we should not focus on those other areas of our job. We need to be proficient in all those, but I think there's a balance, and I think that we really need to stick to learning some of those skills and thinking outside the box. I never ever fathomed a situation where the two things being somebody vomiting in their mask, what do you do? I would have never thought to train on that. Mm-hmm. The other thing is again, the mayday. Calling a mayday on anybody but myself or somebody that is right next to me that fell through the floor, and I have all this information that I can give everybody.
Right.
I just didn't have it that night, and I don't know if the outcome would have been different, but I think we could have put ourselves in a more advantageous situation for a better outcome.
Well, I applaud your department for learning and doing some things new and differently. I can't tell you how many times I've been places where they've had a line of duty death, and I say, what did y'all change or do differently or train differently? And they've done nothing. They just almost go on as if nothing happened. And you can imagine how frustrating that is for me to hear that, and then how encouraging it is for me to hear that you guys are looking at something that is has a very low likelihood of happening again, and focusing some attention on it to say, if it does, we're gonna be better prepared if anything like this happens again. And you talk about those low frequency things. We're talking about something that happens that when it happens, the decision making is something that needs to occur in the 10 to 30 seconds afterwards, because it sets some very tight timelines into motion that's either going to quickly resolve or quickly turn tragic.
Right. And you're absolutely right. I can't say that we have made all these sweeping policy changes. I think those are all great. What I'm most proud of is the people that were most intimately involved in it have done things kind of their own way. But they've made major contributions. And I think that's the thing I'm most proud of. The captain, who was a firefighter then, the captain now, he has taken it upon himself to, again, I know I've used this several times throughout this show, but he has become what I believe to be a master at managing the Mayday. The retired captain has taken it upon himself to speak about the Mayday without a voice. So to me, those are the things that have the most benefit. You can make policy changes, and that's good, and maybe that may be needed in certain situations. But I think we have an opportunity to educate people in the fire service by going out there and telling the story, and coming up with ways to make it better. And and I think our organization did a great job at this, and we didn't accept that this as it's part of the job. It happens. Mm-hmm. It did happen, but it hasn't gone without we've really put up a pretty significant fight afterwards to try to make things better for everybody else, and did it for John and the rest of the fire service. And I hope that anytime anybody has a question, they reach out. And if I don't know the answer, I'm pretty sure I can get somebody that could point them in the right direction. And but it's been a humbling experience. We miss John dearly. Again, not a day goes by that we don't think of him. But this is a way to honor him and his sacrifice, because it's nothing you want anybody to go through. It is no badge of honor at all.
Have you guys created any kind of memorial for him?
We have. We had a memorial in front of Station 71. It's called a Protector Memorial. We had a police officer die in the line of duty many years back, and they made this memorial. Our full intention was to never have a name on that plaque, but we do now. In addition, this last year marked the 5-year anniversary, and we had a ceremony and named Station 71 the John B. Glaser Fire Station. So his locker remains as it did that day. It will never be messed with, and I think we've done a good job of keeping his memory in the forefront. Everybody that gets hired at the station, gets hired at our department, gets my 2.5 hour diatribe, whether they want it or not. They get to hear the story, and after they hear the story, we give them a pin to put on their Class A, because we want them to understand that while they weren't involved in the incident or weren't there when the incident occurred, this is part of their history now.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've done several things.
Good. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to share this story on this platform. Because this podcast gets a fair number of listeners, and what you've been able to do then with sharing it is to not only share John's story, but your personal story of what it was like to go through this. And I hope that every listener is shaking their head and saying to themselves, I never want to go through this. I never want to have this happen. And it'll inspire them to train harder, be more fit. And not that John wasn't, he's a triathlete. But to keep in the forefront of their mind how quickly life can be taken from us. I'm going to call this episode inspired by something that you said 15 feet from fresh air, because that was the gut punch for me when we determined that was your distance to be out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity to speak about what I believe to be an important topic. I also want to thank my colleagues at the Shawnee Fire Department who have taken a horrible incident and, again, in their own ways have made great strides in the fire service. And I appreciate everything you're doing, and I fully support your mission, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you again to my guest, Shawnee Fire Battalion Chief Ryan Pyle. Since 2007, SA Matters instructors have helped more than 1,200 organizations and 87,000 individuals improve high-risk decision-making, including first responders, industrial workers, military personnel, business leaders, medical professionals, utility workers, highway workers, aviation workers, oil refinery operators, and more. If you or someone you care about works in a high-risk, high-consequence decision-making environment, then we are here to help to improve their safety and survival and to help them accomplish the most important mission of all, and that is to go home to the ones who love them. Since the start of the pandemic, I've had an amazing opportunity to present my programs in the virtual platform to groups ranging from 6 to 400. Last week I had the honor of delivering 4 live virtual programs for the Red Deer Emergency Services in Alberta and a situational awareness program for the University of Maryland's EMS degree program students. Thank you to the organizations that have allowed me to offer this virtual training to your workers. If you're interested in hosting a virtual program or a live program when the pandemic is over, just click on the Contact Us tab at the top of the SA Matters homepage and I will give you a call. Finally, remember to check the show notes for how to subscribe to our newsletter and how to follow us on social media. There we share ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to improve the skills of critical thinking and resilient problem solving. Well, that's it. Episode 339 of the Situational Awareness Matters show is complete. Thank you again to my guest, Shawnee Fire Battalion Chief Ryan Pyle. Thank you to our amazing Platinum sponsor for 6 years now, Midwest Fire. Thank you to our feature segment sponsor, Gasaway Virtual Training. And thank you to our associate sponsor, Chief Miller. And most importantly, thank you, the listeners and viewers of this show, for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters show with Dr. Richard Gasaway. If you're interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit his website, samatters.com. If you're interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for a program, or if you would like to be a guest on his show, click the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage.